Empire.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Last Man Standig podcast. Yes, I'm your host, Ben Standig. I cover the Washington Commanders for The Athletic. I am up here in Florham Park, New Jersey area, where the Washington Commanders on Thursday did a joint practice with the New York Jets. It was a soggy day, to say the least. It was definitely not the most effective of days for the Commanders in terms of execution, final result. They seem to think they had a very good day, though, when it comes to just what the point is: practice, improving, figuring out what you need to do to go forward. So I'll discuss what I saw out there, the reaction, maybe what I would say would be sort of the proper reaction to the day's events, and how to put it into some context. And of course, Jayden Daniels. We'll get into that as well here on the podcast. Now, before we get into all that, if you've heard the last couple of episodes, you'll know this, but for those who may be just tuning in, let's get to it. The podcast that you've known as Standig Room Only is going to be going away after the preseason games are over. That feed will no longer be updating with new content, because I've now shifted the podcast to part of Empire Media with Bram Weinstein, and the name has changed accordingly to Last Man Standig. So you have to go to, whether you're an iTunes person, a Spotify person, Podbean, Podcast Addict. I've learned a lot about podcasts over the last few days. Whichever, wherever you are, go find Last Man Standing. I know it may not be coming up easily in the search field right now, but it will, because you guys are all doing it. I really appreciate the interest of signing up. I know a lot of you have already done that, but we want to get everybody else on board. So go search for it, find it, hire a private investigator to find it if you have to, but it's there, I promise. And when you do that, sign up. If you hit the auto download, then it means good stuff, for you get the download obviously automatically, and it's auto download, and it registers for us as well. So that would be amazing. So go do that before you miss out. You forget that wait, what happened here? Where's the podcast? It's here. It's just now called Last Man Standing. So if you've missed the last couple episodes, obviously we've recapped things that have gone on in Ashburn, but now we've got a chance to talk about things that are going on up here in New Jersey in this joint practice. The team is, of course, staying to Saturday, where they will play in a noon kickoff preseason opener at MetLife Stadium. I think to some degree, if from the Jayden Daniels of it all, I think Thursday is probably the highlight. Well, let me rephrase that. The highlight, of course, he could run 80 yards for a touchdown, but I just mean in terms of the practice part of it. He surely has got in way more reps on Thursday than he's going to get in the game Saturday, for a few reasons. One, it's the opener, and we know that starters don't typically play a lot. Two, I don't know if the rain is going to be continuing to what degree for Saturday, but it has been miserable up here in New Jersey. Just persistent rain. There were times during the practice where it really felt like a bit of a deluge. Everybody was wet. The players far more. Everybody was getting wet and annoyed and frustrated and all that. But the players seem to have, if I say fun, I don't want to make it sound like they weren't taking it seriously, but they seem to have a pretty good time getting to play in the rain. And obviously, it's their first opportunity to smash into other players on other teams. And I guess what's the challenge of watching a practice sometimes that I don't know that fans always appreciate, not in terms of like what it is that we're doing, but the context for the commentary afterwards, right? I think this is where this game, this practice, I think, from our perspective, is important to note. First of all, we never see the practice footage. So whatever we're watching, even in Ashburn, in real time, I can't watch everything. You guys know how it is, right? If you're watching even just a football game on television, we get the angle, the quarterback gets the ball, you can maybe keep an eye on both what the quarterback is doing, obviously see if there's a pass rush there. But at that point, we have no real idea of what's going on down the field, right? And even if the quarterback then throws the ball and we see whatever it is, the receiver is wide open. Wait, how did that happen? And even if they show us the replay that says we see that Terry McLaurin, really turned the defensive back around. Well, we still don't see the overall context. What's anybody else doing? Did some defensive back make a mistake? This is why people go back and watch the film. Well, this is even more complicated. A, we don't have the film. B, so much of the action is happening simultaneously. Even so, the Jets have a very nice facility, by the way. Josh Harris was there. I'm sure he was taking some notes as far as what to make of the place and how he might want a practice facility. It's pretty big. So they have two, fields side by side, and to maximize this thing for everybody because they're filming it, you had the Commanders' offense going simultaneous again. The Commanders' offense going against the Jets' defense on one field, simultaneous, flip it around the other way. There were also times where there was maybe one-on-one, again, Commanders' offense, Jets' defense, flip the other way, but then you would have like blocking the linemen together. So it's really hard to see everything, at all. Or not at all, but you're watching one thing, it's hard to see some of the other things. And I just say that's important because the angle where we were on a balcony overlooking the field. It's not a bad angle. And the Commanders' offense was right in was the closest field to us. So we could see more of what was happening, right? Like if I say to you that Jayden Daniels unofficially went 7 of 15 and 11 on 11 drills, I mean that doesn't sound great. But if I tell you it was he was 7 for 11, then the last four passes were incomplete, except that like there was a one completion was wiped out because of a false start penalty on Chris Paul, who was playing right tackle. Yes, right tackle, not because I think they think he's got a shot to be a tackle because they were running out of bodies all over the place. And then there was a pass, I think it was to Zach Ertz that was there for the catch, but to the Jets' credit, they knocked the ball away. So some of that's like, okay, well, maybe Jayden Daniels was a little bit better. Well, except that the 7 completions were all very short. Uh, now if you're looking at Twitter or X highlights, you'll see on the team feed some passes down the field. One to Dyami Brown in particular. Brown made a really nice one-handed catch. That was not though in 11s. That was in a different drill. So everything is context as to what you're seeing and what's not. To stay with the offense in terms of that context, I think Jayden Daniels, for what it was, I think they probably were pretty pleased, at least with the fact of the opportunity. One, he's seeing a new defense. Two, one highlight for Jayden throughout camp has been he's been very good about not turning the ball over, not putting the ball in harm's way. He only, I believe, has one interception so far throughout the training camp piece. He didn't throw an interception against the Jets. Now, he didn't throw the ball for many yards, but again, as I said, if you've got Chris Paul at the right tackle spot with Jayden Daniels, that shows kind of how limited they were in terms of offensive line options. And also, the Jets are really good, right? I mean, you got to put the context in here as well. The Jets are a team, fairly or not, who is hoping they contend for a Super Bowl or AFC East title and then go from there. Whereas the Commanders, it's the bar is a little bit lower. Even if you have high hopes for the future, the 2024 bar is got to be a little lower if you're being realistic. I mean, I've heard people talk about this team having winning records. I've been pretty steadfast about 6 and 7 unless Jayden develops and some of these vets are playing at a really high, higher level than maybe we saw last year or in recent seasons. Austin Eckler, Jeremy Chin, and so on. I think Jayden did the things they wanted him to do, get out there and sort of direct traffic. What is he seeing on the field? Is he making good decisions? And Dan Quinn's talked about this. And I think it can be some coach speak at times, but I think in this case, it seemed pretty sincere to me. Again, without having to watch the tape. Now, Jayden will be out there on Saturday. I don't know he's going to play that much. Again, there's the weather, although Dan Quinn hasn't properly noted it's going to rain in games too. You got to get used to it. So they did that for sure. I think Jayden was fine. Okay. The issues, though, are what's happening around him with the offensive line. And this is why, even if you think to yourself, boy, if you're the Commanders, how much we want to play any of our starters in the first game, I think you got to be a little more nervous about playing Jayden Daniels more than a little bit. I mean, you've got to, if you want to get him out there, that's fine. But here's the context. So Tyler Biadasz is at center, Nick Allegretti's at left guard. Okay, that was the normal part. Now, Sam Cosmi did come back to practice. He had missed a couple days with illness, was back out there. It doesn't look like he was out there like every rep for the first team, but that's fine. I don't think that's a huge deal as an individual for him that it's a concern. But okay, now that's like at times a little bit less. You have one starter a little bit less. Okay, but now you go to the tackle spot. Brandon Coleman, the rookie, he doesn't practice. He doesn't do. He didn't practice the last game or at the last practice in Ashburn. He had some kind of a wrap around his shoulder where they haven't specified what's going on. But let's just, he's dealing with something a little bit. He was out there yesterday or on Thursday. Sorry, um, on the field. We saw him. He went through some drills on the side and but nothing. He was not out there for the 11s in pads and all that. So he wasn't there. Andrew Wiley, for pretty much since almost the start of training camp, has now been limited with what they're saying is, what they've been telling us is tightness without any real specificity to what's going on. Same thing with him. He's in pads, he's dressed. He did very light work out there, but he did not participate in any of the 7s or 11s or anything along those lines. So now, okay, now you're down 2 tackles. Cornelius Lucas was out there. Trent Scott was out there. They're the other 2 tackles that you might think, okay, well, if they keep 4, that's the 4. You guys have heard me say this going back months. Look, everybody recognizes the Commanders are light at tackle. Hopefully, people recognize that Adam Peters had a lot to work out this year. He addressed, most of the position needs, right? But tackle was one they didn't do a ton on. They draft Brandon Coleman, but they didn't sign any notable free agents. Well, but my take was, look, the pool of free agents wasn't that great this year, and they didn't want to commit necessarily big money to somebody who's not that impressive perhaps as a tackle. They waited in the draft. They didn't trade up for one, which I was okay with depending on what the offers were. They get Brandon Coleman in the 3rd round, but that was kind of the move. You have Lucas and Wiley, 2 guys who are okay, not long-term answers, and maybe not even long-term for a full season, but okay. And then you have Coleman. But then you have Trent Scott. But could you improve on the Trent Scott spot? I always thought the answer would be kind of yes. Trent Scott was not a guy that I think made logical sense to say he could be reliable even if we have to, in a pinch guy. There's nothing in his career that has said that. Everybody can have their day, and maybe he can get, new staff can get him more out of him. Physically, there's a lot there. We just hadn't seen it. So I was like, okay, I don't think it's realistic to get the next starting left tackle for real, but you can improve on Trent Scott. Well, today was an example of that because Trent Scott really seemed to struggle out there. I don't want to just keep singling him out, but watching, again, we could see the offense a little bit better. He really did seem to struggle. And they didn't use Lucas on like every single play. I think they kind of know where Lucas is at. So there were times when, you had guards playing tackle, and I know Dan Quinn is saying they're looking for the versatility. I think this was beyond that. To use Chris Paul as the first team right tackle spots was kind of wild to see because we're not even sure Chris Paul would make the team flat out as a guard, and he doesn't have the athleticism, to play outside. But then on the second unit, they would have Mason Brooks at left tackle. We saw him at right tackle last practice, again, out of necessity. Now he was the left tackle. They put Jayden Daniels at right tackle, who's mainly been playing guard. We know he's been struggling since he got drafted last year. And that's then it just kind of keeps going from there. So all of this is like why I don't know how much they're going to look to play Jayden at all on Saturday. Again, he'll be out there, but it may be a one series and done depending on who's available for them. If you have Lucas and you have Coleman and Wiley and a combination of 2, you can probably feel a little better about that. But I think the Commanders have got to, this last week, they added a tackle, but a guy who's only been on practice squads his career. And he was one of the 3 healthy tackles. So they got to figure out what's going on here. Nothing's changed in terms of like, we know they didn't have the high end talent, but now the depth is being questionable. This is, 2 practices in a row where they're very limited there. To maximize this team, you got to get better. There's not a lot of options out there. I'm not saying that there is, but this is where I think they got to start figuring out, do they just forget starter? Do they have 4 tackles that they feel comfortable with on the week 1 roster? That type of deal. So there were some struggles there for sure. The ball, accordingly, they didn't throw the ball a lot down the field. Um, in the sevens or some one-on-ones, you could see some plays. I mentioned the Dyami Brown play. Bryson Tremayne continues to be a downfield threat for this team. He caught 2 passes. You'll see, again, you can see one of them on the team's Twitter feed, where he catches a deep shot. He was even out there with Jayden Daniels for at least a play or two. That's a good sign. Look, I think that Tremayne, Mitchell, Tinsley, that to me is the more interesting combination. Are they battling for one spot? Maybe there's a world where they both can get in. Maybe neither. I don't want to act that Bryson Tremayne has all of a sudden turned into Art Monk. I'm just saying, well, I guess Art Monk wasn't really a downfield threat too much, but you know what I'm saying. But I think he's looked good, and they need size. It would be a pretty logical move to find a way to keep him, and he can help on special teams. So we'll see how that goes. He didn't hurt his cause there. Again, Dyami Brown had a nice one-handed catch. Dan Quinn's been really complimentary of him lately as well. So that bodes well. The Jayden Daniels Zach Ertz combination continues to be a go-to one for the rookie. I would assume Ertz had the most catches among the main options. He's been a red zone target again. I know that's not the most this isn't this isn't 6 years ago when Zach Ertz was like a Pro Bowler, but he's looked good in camp. So whether that's going to keep continuing, we'll see. But he's looked good, and clearly Daniels has felt comfortable throwing it his way. All right. So that's kind of where I'm at with the offense. It was pretty not a lot going on there for the offense from the perspective of us on the outside. Hopefully the team found it different, that they, Jayden Daniels got in the good work that they wanted him to see, going up against a different defense and all that. And the players were pretty happy with the day. It wasn't like a game where they're going, boy, we got to play better. They had proper context, and it's all about practice and improving. But we'll see. We'll see if Dan Quinn gives us a hint in the days ahead about he thought about that. Now on the defensive side, again, they're playing on the far field, so at best you could sort of see, when in between plays on the offensive side, you go pick your head up, and look over there. Now, if I'm just watching the ball, Garrett Wilson, the Jets receiver, one of the best receivers in the league, it just seemed there was a 15-minute stretch where every time I looked over, he was racing down the field and either catching a deep shot over a cornerback or catching something, just a little bit over the, past line of scrimmage, and then just, running past defensive backs, or he was, doing a, 15-yard in, and, he's getting space and just kind of running everywhere. He seemed to be just completely dominating. And if you see, the media is not allowed to shoot, take pictures, take video of what's going on after a certain point. Typically, that point is before the really interesting stuff is taking place, so we can't show you what's happening. But fans were there, and fans took videos, and I tweeted out a couple of them. And you can, if you look at the feed of what the person I did, I think it was some guy named Drew, you can see the other players. Now, it seemed like when Garrett Wilson was catching the ball, Emmanuel Forbes was around him a bunch. Again, this is an interesting context situation. So what, you need to see the full play. Was Forbes out there covering Wilson fairly well, but he's getting a lot of time. The receivers eventually going to get open. The fact that the field was, wet the way that it was, how much did that affect things? Dan Quinn before practice said they were going to do a lot of man stuff. Both teams, they agree to the plan, as to not, make things overly complicated. So a lot of man, maybe that would be different, right? I think Emmanuel Forbes would be better in zone, where he can he can use his eyes, his anticipation to jump into coverage rather than having to just necessarily deal with guys. We saw his struggles last year with AJ Brown. So maybe that context is needed. That said, the results were the results, and Forbes did seem to struggle based on what we could see, what the highlights represent, and so on. He wasn't the only one. I remember seeing Mike Davis get beat down the field early on. So we'll see. Again, we get more out of Quinn on that. The cornerback situation has been interesting because the depth part of this competition, I think, is kind of fascinating with guys like Anusium, the undrafted free agent that they gave a big bonus to, Kai Blue Kelly, who's had some big moments, I would say, in camp in terms of getting around the ball, Tariq Castro Fields. We saw they already cut Christian Holmes. So are any of these guys going to be able to not just step up and make the team, but could they possibly challenge the top group, which I don't think is like there's no Pro Bowl real talent here right now. It doesn't look like unless Forbes or St. Jude's have real breakouts. Mike Davis, maybe he's a more viable, reliable option right now, but he's a guy who's kind of been a guy in his career. I'm not saying that negatively. He's fine, but like he's being don't assume he's being coming in and being the top guy. So the top four guys, um, collectively not the most exciting. And today was a day where it felt like that played out more than perhaps we've even seen in practices. So again, hopefully the staff can have a feel for what's going on there. It's hard to, there was some running plays, but it was hard to get a feel for what was happening too much in the front seven. But looking at some other context, my colleague Zach Rosenblatt, who covers the Jets for the Athletic, he was on that side of the field because that's where their offense was. By the way, I didn't even mention, I guess, in all this, Aaron Rodgers was kept out of practice because of the weather. They have Tyrod Taylor as the backup. Tyrod Taylor has had a good success against the Commanders over the years, and he was really dealing yesterday as well. But in terms of the overall context, again, harder to see that side of the field. Zach was noting at stretches where the front seven was really taking control of the situation. John Allen, speaking with reporters afterwards, said, "Hey, look, I can't tell you exactly what's happening around me because if I'm, in the scrum, it's chaotic." But he thought things went pretty well. So I think again, the defense, maybe Garrett Wilson dominated the practice, doesn't mean all the whole line. And from things I can gather, it seems like from what I could see as well, but the things I could gather, I think the front seven had some good moments, as well as Zach noted that Frankie Louvu beat Tyron Smith outside for, in theory, a sack, or at least put pressure on the quarterback. So some good context there. But again, offensive line, pass coverage, I think these are the things that we were concerned about. I think those concerns continue to exist. I would also say in terms of the receiver front, the Jets had Sauce Gardner out there. In sevens, he was going directly against Terry McLaurin, but in 11s, he was sort of staying on his side of the field. So that may or may not meant McLaurin. Maybe it was Dotson. When you have a guy like that who can take out a receiver, what else do you have? And I think they're still trying to figure out that third and fourth receiver spot. I think Zacchaeus has looked good in practice. Luke McCaffrey is they're still working him out in terms of what how best to use him. I mentioned Tremayne and Dyami Brown. Again, sort of like the defensive backs. There's some intrigue on the backside, but I don't know that it's enough to say go jump some of the starters. So I think those are some of the I guess it would be the questions that I've had and others have had. I think were more highlighted here than maybe they have been in the practices back in Ashburn. And I think all that's a reasonable thing for anybody who was getting over their skis a little bit and thinking, oh boy, every time I'm either seeing it directly at practice or I'm hearing what the reporters are saying, look out, hold on, Eagles and Cowboys, don't miss out on the Commanders. We'll see, but right now, I think this was some good. I keep using the word context. I don't want it to become the new position flex in terms of annoyance by saying it, but again, I know what people, when they're seeing our tweets and our commentary, they might be like, "Oh my god, it was terrible," and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. The team, the staff, they may have a different view once they go back and look at the film and see how they take what took place in New Jersey and translate that back to what they're doing, both in terms of the game on Saturday as well as the next week of practices and so on. Oh, before I forget, I kind of forgot there. The quick notes on special teams. Again, Rain not a fan of kickers. Ahmed and Riley Patterson were both out there. They were not particularly effective. There was one drill they each took 5 from about like 40 and then going backwards. Ahmed missed his last, I want to say 3, and Patterson missed 2 of his 5. They are, and some of the misses were, pretty, not so great. Patterson had one pretty far left. So this is not that big of a surprise to some degree. I've been saying I don't think either one of these guys is a lock at all to be the kicker here. That they're going to still wait it out and see what other moves are made by other teams who have multiple kickers in camp. So it's still likely that the week 1 guy is not out there, and today's showing probably didn't help that cause any either. As far as the kick returner, again, that was being done on the far field, so it was a little hard to see like blocking or what was happening. But the notable part to me was just simply that they were continuing to rotate a bunch of guys in and out. Austin Eckler was back there. At times, Zacchaeus was back there. Sandra Still, Casimir Allen, Noah, as we're calling him for right now. Bram, I'm sure, is listening going, come on, you can say that name. But he was back there a little bit. So some of the Forbes, so some of the people that we've seen already there. So no real change there. But the game, obviously, to a degree, will show us a bit more. Not to mention, we'll get to see the full effect of the new kick return rules and how the team is working to attack those. So those are some of the things I think to note about special teams. I don't know what else to say here. I think that's kind of a good recap. Again, we'll have more to discuss after the game on Saturday. I will be recording a podcast and, of course, writing for The Athletic. So, as a recap, not the best of day for the Commanders. Jayden Daniels did seem to get in some good work. Offensive line, question marks in terms of just who's available to play and what's the secondary. What are they going to be able to do on Saturday when the game is in a real game against a guy like Garrett Wilson? That will be something to watch for sure. Now, as a reminder, before I let everybody get back to their world, the podcast, Last Man Standing. That's the name of the new feed. So if you're listening to this on the Standing Room only feed, this feed will go away. You need to go subscribe wherever you do your podcasting for Last Man Standing. You do that, you won't miss any episodes. You'll make myself and Bram very happy that we're getting everybody to migrate over, which is the goal here. And also the goal is to keep having fun and talking about this team. And hopefully we continue to do that. And we want you guys to be on board. So Last Man Standing, go subscribe there. If you've got a second to drop a rating and a review, that would help as well. Keep reading me on The Athletic. Follow me on X at Ben Standig. And stay dry. I don't know how that's going to happen up here in New Jersey until I get out of here, but that's where it is. It sounds like it's raining all the way down to DC as well. So hopefully everybody is, staying indoors as much as you can if you're feeling. Some people like the wet. What do I know? All right, that's it for now. Ben Standig signing off. Until next time. See ya.